Hard to believe I worked my way through the original Crash and Spyro trilogies so quickly, but here we are a couple months after starting the project, and I've given the spotlight to the Crash trilogy and finally got the chance to play the Spyro games for myself. While I wasn't particularly blown away, I thought the games were good, and were games I was happy to get off my backlog. After the original trilogies, the two franchises went in very similar directions. Mario has been the face of Nintendo ever since he exploded in popularity in 1985, and Sonic has been the same for Sega ever since 1991. But PlayStation has always been a bit more hot potato with mascots. Like Crash Bandicoot became the mascot when he first came out in 1996. The Crash trilogy ended in 1998, the year Spyro came out, and while Crash had still had spin-off games in the PS1 1999 and 2000, one of which, Crash Team Racing, was made by Naughty Dog, on the whole, Spyro was the new PlayStation mascot. Crash and Spyro both put Naughty Dog and Insomniac Games in a tough spot. As far as the games themselves were concerned, both characters were limited in their movesets, which is what added to the simplistic charms of the games, but this obviously couldn't last forever. Spyro especially, since he walked on all fours, hence why Warped and Year of the Dragon had so many additional game modes and elements. But there was also external trouble, as Naughty Dog and Insomniac made their games exclusive for Sony's PlayStation, but Crash and Spyro as intellectual properties were owned by Universal, which is where they got the funding to make the games, meaning that the profits for the games that weren't going to retailers were split in three ways. In order to cut the middleman and work directly with Sony, Naughty Dog and Insomniac would have to abandon Universal and in turn abandon Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, creating new franchises for the PlayStation 2, Jak and Daxter and Ratchet & Clank, who became the new PlayStation mascots yet again alongside the newcomer Sly Cooper from Sucker Punch. Crash and Spyro continued to see new games from different developers, but the overall impression was that these franchises were losing relevance fast, hence the last-ditch efforts to reboot the franchises in more trendy directions in the late 2000s. When that failed, Crash went into hibernation following Mind Over Mutant, and Spyro became the vessel to sell Skylanders, the first in the Toys to Life fad. Which brings us to the late 2010s. If you have a dormant property, there is one time-honored way to bring it back: nostalgia. By 2017, when the world was given the first Crash Bandicoot game in almost a decade, Crash Bandicoot: The Sane Trilogy. It had been 20 years since Crash Bandicoot 2 was released, so if you were like 5 years old when the original Crash Bandicoot came out, and maybe moved on to other games when Crash and Spyro lost relevance, a souped-up HD remake of the original Crash trilogy would be just what you, 25 to 30-year-old 2017 gamer, would need to make you want to buy a Crash game, and maybe share it with your own children. The Sane Trilogy was a hit, and this led to us getting Spyro the Reignited Trilogy just 1 year later, and Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled a year after that. I was an early adopter of the Sane Trilogy as I love Naughty Dog's Crash games, so why not give it a shot? Show some love for the series' comeback into the limelight. I also own the Reignited Trilogy and Nitro Fuel despite having never played them before now, which begs the question, of the two remade trilogies, which one is superior? Well, I should mention I'm looking at both on the PlayStation 4. Those are the versions I own. I don't feel like going through the hassle of recording PC games, even though I'm a snob for 60 frames per second. Update, as of recording this audio on August 14th, that's not when this video is coming out. But I've since got a new computer and basically could do anything, but now it's just a matter of I don't feel like buying Spyro and Crash again. You might think that because my take on the PS1 Crash and Spyro trilogies was that Crash mopped the floor with Spyro, that this video is set in stone conclusion as well, but you'd actually be wrong. To let the cat out of the bag, I was happy to support the Sane Trilogy at launch, but I never actually liked it very much. To start with some minor points, I think the remakes of the Crash trilogy are aesthetically pleasing most of the time, but I just feel like it was a rather haphazard job. Like, I think there were a lot of things that got lost in translation between PS1 and the newer consoles, like the fruit you collect. In the PlayStation 1 games, it wasn't a big deal, but when you grabbed a fruit, it would go seamlessly into the fruit icon next to the number. But in the remakes, it just flies close to it, but then disappears. And what weirded me out about this was that I remember in an interview with the developers at Vicarious Visions stating that the fans mentioned this on Twitter and that they fixed it despite my having downloaded the patch and still having the problem. But only in the main stages, as the bonus rooms didn't suffer from it at all. The lighting was also strange to me. Like, the Sane Trilogy looks up to par as far as next-gen games are concerned, looking far better than, say, Sonic Forces, but nowhere near as good as a Ratchet & Clank 2016 or a Mario Odyssey. But there are some occasions where the lighting and the models don't agree with each other. The atmosphere in many ways had been undercut, like Crash 2's warp rooms are now brightly lit and are therefore a downgrade to me when watching these cutscenes. In general, the cutscenes are well animated, but to me, they feel really overdone. Not Twin Snakes bad, but I get the PS1 cinematography is a bit stock, but I thought it got the job done just fine. Now you have Uka Uka flying around the warped opening and it just looks distracting to me. which I suppose is a byproduct of the direction the Crash series took after Crash to Insanity, but I much prefer the more laid-back version of this highly out-there world of characters. Say that 10 times fast. Which also applies to Lex Lang as Cortex, who I think is good, but completely lacks the menace of Clancy Brown.
You fool! Do you think I'm unaware of the situation? If we don't have any friends left on the surface, then we need to find an enemy.
You fool! Do you think I'm unaware of the situation? If we don't have any friends left on the surface, then we'll need to find an enemy.
Nothing feels the effect of this more than the music, though. The Crash trilogy had such a punch to it that I can't put it into words, but just listen. By comparison, I think the Insane trilogy just feels so lame. Like, I wish I had a better word for it, as I'm sure the people who worked on the music had talent, but it just feels so weak and unconvincing to me. I just didn't like what they did to the music. On the presentation front, I think both games do a good job modernizing the UI and unifying the games by giving them one UI to use, with small variations between games to distinguish them, while also keeping the gameplay progression within each game intact. As in, Crash doesn't have the baseball slide in Crash 1, and Crash doesn't have a double jump in Crash 2. As far as the game's presentation is concerned, I thought Tom Kenny as Spyro sounded a lot different than he did on PS1.
What are you, some kind of goat?
What are you, some kind of goat?
And that the cutscenes contained that feeling of being really overdone, like having old people jokes in regards to the camera at the beginning of Spyro 1, or having Hunter get smacked down the tunnel at the start of Spyro 3. But they also put in an effort to fix things that made no sense, like explaining what exactly was going on from Nasty Nork's perspective in Spyro 1, rather than having to use your imagination. So there are ups and downs here. I am glad that the Crash games decided to stay faithful to the designs of the characters, as I thought the Reignited Trilogy's attempts to redesign characters who looked fine just often weirded me out more than anything else. Like, I think Hunter, Alora, Ripto, and the rest look pretty uncanny. The music didn't do it for me like the PS1 versions, but unlike Crash, you can actually choose to have the PS1 soundtrack in there, so I can accept it more than I could on the Insane Trilogy. There's also this part with Hunter in Spyro 2. But all of these are just nitpicks at the end of the day. What matters most is the gameplay, and that's the thing I really don't like about the Insane Trilogy. Which, by the way, as I'm writing this, I keep typing Insane Trilogy as N-Snay Trilogy, and I have to keep correcting it. Too many N's and S's in one word. Crash 1 had some stiff control in it originally, which is why I was so excited for the N-Snay Trilogy at first. It could fix some of Crash 1's faults that came with age rather than design, like the D-pad control of a 3D game, an obtuse save system, and unbalanced difficulty like needing to not die to get a gem. But Crash 2 and 3 played perfectly, so you'd have to try to fuck them up, but here we are. I don't think the N-Snay Trilogy is a fuck-up, I just think the PS1 games are a lot more fun to play. Yes, even Crash 1. In games like Crash, arcade-style react-fast platformers, you need good control. Crash 1's level design worked with the controls fine enough, but here we are and we have the Insane Trilogy, and while I think it works for the most part, I feel like I wasn't in control a lot of the time. Mainly, I kept dying from jumps I wasn't on the very edge of the platform for. Like, I hated that the more I kept playing this remake. The level design is still the same as the classic trilogy, only with more frustration as I keep dying from jumps I feel like I could have made if I was playing Crash 2 or 3. And that really killed the experience of playing Crash Insane for me. Yeah, that's basically it. You can have little nice features like Crash 3 time trials in every game, the total box tally on the screen like Crash 3, or Coco returning in time from the time twister in Crash 3 to help you in Crash 1 and 2, say that 10 times fast. But when I'm fundamentally not enjoying the experience because I keep dying over and over from, again, reasons I think stem from the controls, I'm just going to shut the console off and go play Crash on PS1 for what I think is the better experience. At least there, I'll be experiencing the games as Naughty Dog originally made them, pushing the PS1 to its limits each time, unlike this game, where they don't even really try to fix issues that were hard baked into the old games. Like what, you ask? Parts in Crash 1 and 2 where you had to backtrack towards the camera. These were always a nightmare as a byproduct of the technical marvel at Naughty Dog, where they cut down loading screens by only loading what was on the screen. This effect goes from said marvel to added frustration as you can't turn the camera around to see what's in front of you, placing you in the line of fire. That didn't get fixed, so I am seriously sitting here just wondering why I should even play the Insane Trilogy again when I feel like my experience on PS1 would be less frustrating. Which hopefully this take won't get me lynched by the audience, as I have no ill will towards people who made the game. I'm sure they're all good, talented people, but I just got pissed off while playing it. And I'm sure it had more to do with the suits upstairs anyway, the devs crunching to meet deadlines and all that. I mean, I try not to complain about fanboys in my videos, instead just reviewing products, but I still can't get over how much entitlement and fanboyism came during the Reignited Trilogy pre-release. Nothing to make me boycott the game over, but I just remember the hashtag I will support Spyro folks just acting like complete fanboys playing right into Activision's hands by pledging the unwavering support of a series. And by series, I mean capitalist pigs. When they try to sell you a disc with one game on it when the later two need a download first. This sucks because when the internet servers go down, those last two games would have been lost. It is worth mentioning that this has been fixed in later printings of the game, but still, those early copies are still out there. And maybe it wouldn't have been fixed if it wasn't criticized in the first place. The Reignited Trilogy already suffered a lot from rushed development, to the point where it got delayed a couple months because they just needed that time to polish it, even outsourcing Spyro 3 on the collection to the patron saints of ruination, Sanzaru Games. B-Mask made excellent points about this kind of brand loyalty in his Reignited Trilogy video, so let's just see what he said, and you can check out the rest for yourself, link in the description.
I think the deadline move was wise, but I'm somewhat concerned with the reaction some took to the news. Fans who panicked when they saw people denouncing the patch decided to start a hashtag, I will support Spyro, as a promise to buy the game regardless. How brave. Let's encourage patches so developers continue to get stressful, unrealistic deadlines just so we can get sloppy games earlier. There were stupid claims that came out of this, like how Spyro was so big it couldn't fit on the disc, completely disproven by the way, and that's a sign of desperation that reflects badly on the audience. Some even hit out at those who criticised the lack of cutscene subtitles, which is again not a great look. The fact that the simple action wasn't completed only grows the belief that this was a production pipeline of confused priorities. If you support this, I feel you are being criminally unfair to these developers and players, not to mention people who don't have access to great internet. Way to mock the less economically able, guys. I don't think it's good to set a precedent where we release the game before it's ready and patches will deal with the rest, right? In 10 years from now, when Bel-Sharamith decimates the population and we're left scrambling for relics of our past, our future selves are going to find a first print copy of Reignited, copies of the classic games, and their respective consoles miraculously intact. There'll be no internet, no download patches, so they'll discover a buggy, unpatched disc with half the content locked off. Then they'll play the OGs. They'll turn to each other. This is pretty dope.
Yeah, I wish developers weren't given harsh deadlines because game development and fine-tuning is difficult work, but even if it was rushed, I thought Reignited was way better than the Insane Trilogy. First, Spyro has never controlled better. The feel of playing these classic games is better than ever before, to the point where I almost don't find collecting gems without sparks to be annoying. The analog movement in Reignited just feels better to me. The animation is fluid, leading to a character that I think is just fun to move around as, which is definitely the mark of good gameplay. At the end of the day, it's still just the Spyro trilogy with souped up graphics. Now, out of respects for the classics, I'd still probably rather play the PS1 versions, but I can totally appreciate the PS4 version as valid, with great improvements like full analog camera control, and a mini-map allowing for easier exploration of areas that you had been to before. Quicker access to the guide than you had in Spyro 2 and 3, where the menu scrolls were really slow, and small adjustments like better camera and boss fights and so on. Like all the Spyro games before it, I don't have a great deal of commentary to add besides that, as the gameplay is still not my cup of tea, but hey, it felt good to play, and that should count for something. So those are my thoughts on the Insane Trilogy and the Reignited Trilogy. Like I said before, nostalgia is a powerful agent. It has brought back two dormant franchises back into popularity, making a racing game remake that absolutely shattered the competition, Team Sonic Racing. Now this has led to a brand new game, Crash 4, It's About Time, which I hope is a good game. I'll certainly give it a shot myself. I don't really like the title, but I can look past that. This does get myself thinking though. Nostalgia is a powerful agent. So what now? Not for Crash and Spyro, but for PlayStation nostalgia in general. I grew up with the PlayStation 2, and I can tell you it's really bizarre to think the early 2000s was 20 years ago almost. Jak and Daxter has been dormant for over a decade now, and while I imagine remaking games as big as Jak would be difficult, I feel like it's not impossible for the PS5 to handle. Ratchet & Clank is in a weird spot because the first game got a pseudo-remake already and is marching on with its own new games. What I'm most invested in is Sly Cooper, of course. The Sly trilogy is the perfect age for nostalgia, a contrast with Sly 4 that came out past the series' relevancy point, and before the nostalgia really set in, leading to a failed sequel. I think that if they ever brought Sly back, it would be the perfect spot for a remade trilogy, completely ignoring the terrible ending of Sly 4. If they did it right, I'd get the Sly game of my dreams, and if they screwed it up, I would be able to do a rant view that would echo in the meme halls for years to come. It's a win-win. But before I go off on a Sly tangent, I at least got to bash Sly 4 for the day. Other than that, I'm not really sure how to end this video, so it would be weird if it cut off really abruptly.